Hello and welcome back to Wake Up Cricket powered by Pavilion Picks. It has been a night to remember as India lift the T20 World Cup for a consecutive second time. And there's so much to unpack. There's also an India loss that we will get into. But before that, good morning to all of you. Hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, get us to how many ever subscribers you can, and let's get right into it.
Now, it's a night that we'd want to relive over and over again over the coming days and decades, and for how long? Let's get started. So, India sealed the T20 World Cup. India thrashed New Zealand to retain the T20 World Cup title. India delivered a commanding performance to defeat New Zealand by 96 runs in the final of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup at the Narendra Modi Stadium, becoming the first team to successfully defend the Men's T20 World Cup title. Batting first, India piled up a massive 255 for 5, driven by explosive half centuries from Abhishek Sharma, Ishan Kishan, and another outstanding knock from Sanju Samson, who scored 89 of 42 balls. Samson's innings captured a remarkable late tournament run that included consecutive scores of 97 not out and 89. Abhishek set the tone early with an 18 ball 50, the fastest in a T20 World Cup knockout match, helping India race to 92 without loss in the power play. Kishan then maintained the momentum with a rapid 23 ball half century before a late burst from Shivam Dube pushed India past 250. In response, New Zealand's chase quickly unraveled against India's bowling attack. Jasprit Bumrah delivered a decisive spell of 4 for 15, using his trademark off-cutters to dismantle the middle order. Akshar Patel supported with 3 for 27 as wickets fell regularly. Tim Seifert provided brief resistance with a 52, while Captain Mitchell Santner added 43, but the result was never in doubt as New Zealand were bowled out for 159. The victory gave India the third men's T20 World Cup crown and a memorable home triumph after falling short in 2023 ODI World Cup final.
Now, the 2023 ODI World Cup final just does bring back some very interesting memories having watched that match live and to see India go down from there. And then for this to happen, for them to come back at Ahmedabad very poetically being able to finally ensure that the crowd isn't silenced. And what a game of cricket it was, and what an entire tournament India's had. Now, coming into this World Cup, we all knew and we all sort of predicted that it has to be India that wins this World Cup because any other result would just seem wrong. And that's exactly what happened. India coming into this tournament, however, through this tournament, they realized that they're not particularly playing their best brand of cricket. And so, something else that was also discussion is can this team go on to have the perfect match? And I think this came as close as possible to India having a perfect game. Although we did start off slightly hesitantly, or people would think that, oh, 2 overs, we've only got 12 runs, third over, we've only got a total of 27 runs. And from there, the kind of explosion that we saw, the kind of confidence that Abhishek and Sanju had to be able to accept the fact that okay, they can take their time and then explode, because from 27 for no loss in just the end of the power play in those 3 overs, we went to 92 for 0. And that's something that's almost video game like. From there, it was never going to be us looking back. And to get to 255, I mean, that's a massive total however you look at it. In fact, we also have a meme on this which we will get to. But all in all, from there, it was always going to be India. It was always going to be dominant from India. And then Bumrah just doing Bumrah things. I think it's capped off a brilliant campaign in really good style.
Absolutely. Barring that blip against South Africa, India also showed tremendous adaptability through the course of the campaign. Moving on to the next story, which is Australia sealed 12-4 series win as Healy signs off with Test victory. Australia women's cricket team completed a dominant 12-4 multi-format series win over Indian women's team at the Waka Ground, marking an emotional farewell for captain Elisa Healy in a final international match. Australia comfortably chased the target in the pink ball test with openers Litchfield and Wall guiding the team home to cap a comprehensive performance across the final four matches of the series. Healy said the team's response after losing the T20I leg was particularly satisfying and expressed hope that the women's test cricket would continue to grow. Reflecting on her career, she thanked her fans and teammates and joked that she would now watch the team from the outside, possibly as a bitter ex-player offering advice. Indian captain Harmanpreet Kaur said her side started the tour strongly in the T20I series but could not maintain momentum in the longer formats. She added that more multi format series would help the team gain confidence and experience in Test cricket. All rounder Annabelle Sutherland was named Player of the Series after another influential performance, saying tests were rare in women's game but were always special to play. The match itself was completed quickly, becoming the third shortest finished women's test by balls and highlighting Australia's control throughout the contest.
Now, when India started off this tour to Australia, of course, they started off really strongly, winning that T20I series. But from there, the kind of drubbing that we got both in the ODIs and finally in the ping ball test is something that India needs to reflect on, right? In some odd sense, it's almost poetic, because if I draw a comparison to men's cricket, it's very much like India winning the '83 World Cup and then the men losing to the West Indies side, getting absolutely thrashed. It was almost similar in that way to what happened here. But talking about the test match itself, right? India, now they were put into bat first and they scored 198 in their first innings. And a lot of people had a lot of things to say about the kind of stroke making that our batters were taking part in, and just the kind of loose shots that we were playing. And that highlights a greater problem in the system, which has a lot to do with that this side is still developing in the red ball format. But before this, something you need to keep in mind is that since 2006, if I'm not wrong, India had not lost a test match. So coming into this, technically India were one of the sides to beat in a test match. But for Australia to come out and do what they did, I think it really talks about a bunch of factors that we can get into, right? For starters, most of these players aren't red ball specialists, so to speak, or pink ball in this case. There's a lot of pool of players who are playing for India in the white ball format, do well, show certain attributes, and then get picked into the pink ball setup. This also has a lot to do with the fact that our domestic tournaments are not as frequent in terms of the multi-day challenges, and so that's something that India will have to go back to the drawing board and look at. But all in all, it was an interesting test match. Obviously disappointed from an Indian standpoint itself, but we just hope that we get to see more test matches, and maybe that's what makes this team better over time.
Absolutely. Moving on, former Lord's head groundsman Mick Hunt passes away. Mick Hunt, the long serving head groundsman at Lord's Cricket Ground, has died after a remarkable career spanning nearly 5 decades. Hunt joined the ground staff in 1969 and became the head groundsman in 1985, overseeing pitch preparation at the historic venue for 49 years before stepping down in 2018. During his tenure, Lords hosted 81 test matches along with numerous men's and women's limited over games, including 8 World Cup finals, as well as county matches for Middlesex County Cricket Club. Tributes poured in for Hunt, with former England national team and Middlesex seamer Angus Fraser describing him as a legend who played a huge role in maintaining the beauty of Lords over decades. One of his biggest challenges came after the archery competition at the 2012 Summer Olympics was held at Lords. With only 12 days before a test between England and South Africa, Hunt had to prepare the pitch and restore large sections of the outfield following the removal of temporary stands. South Africa won that thrilling test by 51 runs, and the pitch was rated very good, with Hunt later being named the World Groundsman of the Year for the achievement.
Now, with Mick Hunt, it's a very interesting story to come out, right? Because usually we always look at cricket from the lens of looking at players and just looking at games and what has been achieved, what personal milestones have been racked, and so on and so forth. So, from that point of view, I think this news is very nice to sort of put out, because it throws a light on someone who is within the cricketing fraternity but isn't a player. There's so many people around that are able to make games happen, right? You of course have the broadcast crew, but most importantly, you have the groundsmen. I think they're the ones who often get bashed very quickly because of the kind of pitches that some places might produce, but are never really appreciated for the good pitches that they come up with over large periods of time, right? Here's a man who's been a part of Lords as a ground curator for 49 years. Let that sink in. That's double my age, to give you context. And so it really sort of paints a very interesting light of what this person's job is, right? And by no means is it also easy to be able to prepare a pitch. A lot goes into the preparation of a pitch itself. So all things considered, I think it was really nice for this piece to come out and for people to pour their appreciation for this man and just the journey that he's had with Lord's Cricket Ground. It's almost fascinating to think that someone's been at the ground. He started off learning how to make a pitch there, then gets promoted to, after about 16 odd years, to the head curator and then is handling all of those things for the Lord's cricket ground, right? I'm sure that if we had a chance to talk to some of these former cricketers, they would have some really interesting anecdotes and some really interesting stories. And that's what cricket is all about at the end of the day, right? It's about who all make the sport what it is, and the kind of interactions and the kind of working together that you need from different systems in the wheel itself, or from different cogs in the wheel, to be able to make this sport function smoothly. But that's all I have for you in terms of this Mikhunt news. May he rest easy.
Absolutely. The cricketing ecosystem is huge, and there's so many components in it, and that are absolutely imperative to it functioning properly. Up next, Leah Tahuhu retires from ODIs after 15-year career. Leah Tahuhu has retired from ODI cricket, bringing the curtain down on a 15-year career with New Zealand women's team. Tahuhu made her ODI debut against Australia in 2011 and finishes as New Zealand's most successful bowler in the format with 125 wickets in 103 matches. At 35 years of age, Tahu has been known for her pace. She played in four editions of the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup in 2013, 17, 22, and 25 and claimed a record 36 World Cup wickets for New Zealand. Her final ODI appearance came against England during the 2025 World Cup. Tahu said representing the White Ferns over 100 times was something she never imagined, and that she leaves the format proud of her achievements. She will continue playing T20Is and franchise cricket, having also been part of New Zealand's title winning squad at the 2024 ICC Women's T20 World Cup. New Zealand head coach Ben Sawyer praised Tahu's longevity and leadership, noting her influence on the next generation of fast bowlers.
Now, whenever we talk about New Zealand women's cricket, right, it's usually centered around conversations about Susie Bates as well as Sophie Devine, because these two, in a fashion very similar to Leah Tahu, have been around for a really long time. They've been there for 15 to 20 years within the system itself, and they're now coming to the fag end of their careers. So, I would almost put Tahuhu in the exact same list as Sophie Devine as well as Susie Bates, because her contributions are immense. I mean, it's also evident in her records, her being the highest wicket taker for New Zealand itself in terms of women's cricket. But even outside of that, the kind of impact that these people have goes beyond just helping people get into the cricket team or guiding the youngsters in the cricket team itself, right? These are people who will be inspiring generations of cricketers to come, will be inspiring a lot of kids to take up the sport in the first place. And for New Zealand, it's also the fact that they very recently in 2024 did lift the T20 World Cup. So they have done enough to be able to inspire a lot of people around them. Now, specifically with Leah Tahuhu, she also did really well in the 2025 World Cup. In fact, she was one of New Zealand's mainstays during that season, and she ensured that basically whenever it came to the middle overs from the right after the power play, she was essentially in charge. And yeah, there's not really much more to add except for the fact that now she'll be focusing only on one format, which in some sense makes that New Zealand T20 side a lot stronger, because she's going to have tunnel vision for getting a T20 World Cup yet again. But even just outside of that, she still has so much to offer in terms of being able to play these franchise leagues, being able to share her experience with so many players across the board. And we're going to see a lot of this. In fact, there's going to be this entire generation of women's cricketers that is all going to be retiring, and it's going to be the new stars who come in, the likes of someone like Elise Perry, for example. She's also very close to the end of her career. So a lot of these stalwarts of the game from the generation that really defined women's cricket and took it to the next level are now coming towards the end of their careers.
As Divine refers as the grandmamas of New Zealand cricket.
That's
She
right.
obviously includes herself when she mentions so, but they've been absolute inspirations. Now, talking about another inspirational figure, and these days, whenever there is a Jasprit Bumrah exploit, we simply say Bumrah doing Bumrah things. Jasprit
That's true.
Bumrah stars in Ahmedabad as India clinched T20 World Cup title. Jasprit Bumrah described India's T20 World Cup triumph in Ahmedabad as extremely special after producing a match winning spell in the final against New Zealand. Playing at the Narendra Modi Stadium, the venue where India lost the 2023 ODI World Cup final to Australia, Bumrah delivered career best T20I figures of 4 for 15 to help India seal a dominant victory and their third ICC Men's T20 World Cup title. Bumrah struck early in the chase by dismissing Rachin Ravindra with the slow off cutter, the same variation that had earlier accounted for Harry Brook in the semi final. His disciplined spell during the power play put New Zealand under immense pressure while defending India's huge total of 255. The fast bowler said his experience of playing on flat pitches in Ahmedabad helped him vary his pace and outthink the batters rather than relying purely on speed. He finished the tournament with 14 wickets, the joint most by any bowler. Bumrah also praised the support from teammates including Akshar Patel, who took 3 for 27, and Hardik Pandya as India's bowlers held their nerve to secure the title in front of more than 86,000 fans.
I think if we're talking about a World Cup campaign, and especially in the last few years, it's impossible to not mention Jasprit Bumrah, right? He's almost, in some sense, single-handedly got India to certain positions in certain world tournaments. And once again, I'm not at all surprised that he's ending up as the joint second, as the joint highest wicket taker, right? But even if you just unpack yesterday itself, something I really like about Bumrah's effort is that usually when you see fast bowlers, they do have an ego, and rightfully so. They're people who can ball great pace, but Bumrah's greatest strength is the fact that he can just let go of that ego. He can just start off his spell bowling a delivery at 115 clicks, like he did to Harry Brook, like he did to Rachin Ravindra. There is no ego in him to be able to come out and say, I am that fast bowler and I am going to bowl a 140 click delivery to start off my spell. And that's possibly one of the biggest strengths of Bumrah, right? He understands the game so well. He's such a thinking cricketer, something we've spoken about repeatedly, and we will be speaking about not only till the end of his career but also for generations to come, is how quickly he can just pick the lines and lengths and the kind of variations that work on a pitch. Which, what's also very interesting is the fact that the same sort of deliveries might not have done as well for New Zealand, because there were points in the match during the power play and even a little later where New Zealand pacers were also employing the same kinds of cutters. Of course, they're not as similar to Bumrah because there is a technical nuance there. But for him to get the same sort of cutters to work of better lengths, learning not only from his own experience of playing in Ahmedabad, but also from the fact that it did not work for New Zealand in a certain way. And so he came out and did that differently. I think it was the icing on the cake for him to get the 4 for 15, because a lot of times we also see that Bumrah ends up bowling those really crucial overs, not giving away runs, but the batters just tend to play him out. They're happy to just get even 5 runs off the over and not worry about it. So this came around beautifully for him, and he ended up as the highest wicket taker.
Also, no matter what we do, we end up going back to 19th November 2023. Probably after 8th March, we'd reflect on that with some sort of reconciliation, because
Hmm. Right.
the parallels are always to be found. Now, there's a meme, and that's pretty insane. Let's have a look at it. 2023 ODI World Cup final, the number of runs that India scored in it, probably not enough, of course, but got
Hmm.
exceeded by the score in this T20 World Cup final.
I mean, it highlights so many things, right? For starters, T20 cricket has reached a whole other level where even if you're like where you're able to score 255 for 5, because if you just pull up the scorecard and if you just show it to someone who's from a generation previous to ours, they will say that this is the scorecard of an ODI World Cup game, or a scorecard of an ODI game in a sense. But for India, I think you rightfully said that we keep going back to the 2023 final because irrespective of what happens, I think that's a wound that's not going to heal till we win a home World Cup, not even just an ODI World Cup. But yeah, like it just puts into perspective the craziness of what happened yesterday. For India to score 255, more than what we did in the ODI World Cup final, which also highlights the fact that there was something that could be done better with the pitch in the ODI World Cup final. We should have just produced a normal true pitch that would have been enough for us. And yeah, I think it's just very funny to look at. There's really not much more to add except for the perspective it gives you about the simple fact that firstly this team has gone bonkers, but just the kind of score that they've been able to rack up is insane. Mega, any thoughts on the World Cup? Any memories that you're going to have from this?
So when the tournament started, there were obviously conversations about around 300, and as the
Sure.
group stage unfold, all of those expectations came under control. But
Hmm.
knockout onwards, we've seen how the scoring has gone up, and the reason why initially not a lot of runs were scored. One were the conditions, second were the fact that the teams were also reluctant to go full throttle like that because there was so much
True.
at stake. We see in franchise tournaments the run scoring is on the higher side, and the World Cups do not reflect that in at the same level.
That is true.
But
Yeah.
this time around in the semis and in the finals, obviously it changed, and that's also down to eventually after being at home. both New Zealand and India, because New Zealand chased the target against South Africa with
Oh,
so much to spare. So
yeah.
probably they grew in confidence and they backed their style, the style that they adopted in the World Cup cycle. And probably we'd get to see more of that as subsequent World Cups come. What do you think, Pratib?
Yeah, because I mean, I agree with you. Towards the end, we did see that when slightly better or fairly better
Yeah.
pitches were dished out, it did impact the kind of run scoring, and that's where like the intent-driven maniacs that these people are, they were able to get such big scores. In fact, in every game that India's batted first in this tournament, I think they've crossed 250 each and every time. So that's an insane stat to me to think that India put into bat first thrice in the tournament and all three times they've gone past 250. I don't see why it would be too long before India also breached the 300 the way they're going. And all in all, I think just a beautiful campaign. But yeah, I think that's mostly it from us today. We've covered the World Cup, we've covered the Indian women's Test cricket as well. Uh, there is cricket that is happening around. You can follow the Sheffield Shield. There's also a couple of women's series that are going on. So definitely tune in. Cricket just never stops. And why would it? Because we don't stop either. We will come back to you tomorrow. But till then, hit that like button, share this video with friends, hit that subscribe button as well so that we can keep growing and dish this out to a lot more people. But that's it from us at Wake Up Cricket. Peace.